Hello, it's been a few weeks since my last video. May was a crazy busy month, but I'm sort of now back on track. Even though I didn't review any books last month, I did read a fair amount, and so I'm going to share 5 books that I've read pretty recently and are just really excellent books. So the first is The Invisible Library by Genevieve Cogman, and this is a advanced reader copy, so it might be slightly different than the official published version. But this book is about an invisible library that is an interdimensional structure that crosses a lot of worlds, and the librarians here, they go and they retrieve important books from different realities and then they archive them in the library. And the senior librarians get to stay in the library and they read and they research, whereas the junior librarians are the field agents who go out and retrieve the books. Irene, our main character, is a junior librarian, and at the beginning of the book she gets 2 things. So one is a new mysterious apprentice, and 2 is a retrieval job into a kind of alternate chaos-infested Victorian London with zeppelins and the Fae and werewolves and vampires and semi-robotic alligators, which all sounds like nonsense, but it's really, really fun. And unfortunately for Irene, it's not a very straightforward retrieval job. It is one where there are a lot of parties who are willing to kill over the possession of this book. So this adventure, this like madcap going through Victorian England adventure to find a particular object, of course reminds me so much of To Say Nothing of the Dog by Connie Willis, which is one of my favorite books. And both that book and The Invisible Library are really great, and they both have like really tight writing, and I really appreciate this kind of book. Apparently it's a very, very specific little niche. And for this book, I also really love the characters. Our main character, Irene, that I mentioned, she is so level-headed in the face of all the crazies, but she also has like a weakness for detective fiction, which makes her very endearing. And so this book is so much fun. I'm already on the 3rd book in this series because I can't stop reading it. It's so much fun, and if you want something that's going to be a madcap fun adventure, this is the book. Another book that I read recently is Borderline by Mishell Baker, and I almost didn't read this book. So the reason I read it is because it was on this year's nominee list for the Nebula Awards, and so Nebula nominees, pretty good recommendation for a book, so I decided to pick it up. Otherwise I might not have, just because the premise doesn't really jive with the things that I just tend to like reading. Like for one, it's set in LA, I just don't really like LA. 2, it has a lot of Hollywood types and their Fae counterparts who are also of the Hollywood culture, which I'm not a fan of. And also it's a urban fantasy, and I don't read a lot of urban fantasies, it's just not my wheelhouse. But I did read this, and it turned out to be really, really good, so I'm glad I read it. At the beginning of this book, we start with Millie, our main character, and she is in a bleak state. She has recently lost her legs and her filmmaking career after a suicide attempt. In the wake of this, the Secret Arcadia project approaches Millie, and they offer her a job policing the traffic between the world of the Fae and our world. And so adventure and things ensue. The characters in this that are the Hollywood types are more like the power players. We both have Hollywood and Fae power players, making for very high stakes situations happening in the plot. It's very thrilling, and so I think those like high stakes and higher level politicking and intrigue around LA and Hollywood just fit my personal preferences better than most urban fantasies that are kind of set with Hollywood types. So I really liked that. But more than that, like what makes this book really, really special is Millie. Millie has borderline personality disorder, and her mental health is dealt with in a very no-nonsense way, even though it's like so pervasive, and it's a part of her. It's very much a part of the book and a part of Millie, this borderline personality disorder. But we don't harp on it, it's just there. And I think it's just dealt with so well. I'm not sure how to explain it, but it's beautifully done, and I really appreciate like her and like how character driven and interesting this was. Alright, moving along to another book that I read last month-ish is The Eyre Affair. This is by Jasper Fforde. It's very funny, it's a silly book, it's a smart book. And I guess the tagline should probably be a silly book for smart people. Like if you're well read, or if you're like the English major type of person, you'll totally delight in this book. And even if you're not, if you like a blend of sci-fi, fantasy, mystery, humor, and there's this interesting lowbrow, highbrow, like lowbrow comedy, highbrow erudition combo that makes it really, really great. This book is set in a alternate 1980s Great Britain, and it's like a wacky, crazy world. It's very Douglas Adams vibe going on. And in this world, literature is taken really seriously. There are a lot of popular museums for authors. There are political parties who are courting fans of certain works of literature, and the forgery of literature is taken as a very serious crime by the literary police. And our main character is Thursday. She's a special operative in the literary detective field. And a lot of the plot centers around someone who's kidnapping characters from literature. It's a little crazy world. It's like cloning, there's time travel like in pockets of this world. It's absolutely crazy, but also wonderful and fun and pretty smart. And for a humor book, it has a really complicated plot, and it is surprisingly character driven. And so I really come to appreciate Thursday. She's such a great protagonist, and it's a really crazy, wonderful world and book. Another book I read is Amberlough. This is by Lara, Elena, Donnelly, and its idea first is so fantastic. It's a queer, a cabaret-esque spy thriller. And not only is the idea great, it's also beautifully executed. In this book, we have Amberlough, which is a gritty glam city. It's a place that's cosmopolitan, but also corrupt and very indulgent, but luxuriously indulgent. And the action of this book is set during the rise of a political group that is radically conservative and also pretty fascist. So it is very interesting times for the city of Amberlough, and our main character is a gay double agent. And so he's scheming, and he's trying to protect his smuggler lover, who is also an MC at a cabaret. It's a lot of double lives galore. It's really interesting and fairly fun, though also it's a pretty melancholic book. You have kind of the seedy nature of Amberlough and the crazy rise of this political group that's so conservative. And you have your, gay double agent main characters, and it's such a fascinating world and concept that it's like luxurious just to even read it. And so if that whole thing that I just talked about sounds really like sexy and intriguing, 100% go get a copy. It's a really, really interesting book. And lastly, for my last book, I'm not going to talk about a sci-fi fantasy novel. Instead, I'm going to talk about a humorous collection, nonfiction collection. Anyway, the book, I should just talk about it. It's actually called You Can't Touch My Hair. It's by Phoebe Robinson, and she is a comedian and also a podcaster on Two Dope Queens. This book is an essay collection about race and gender and pop culture. She writes about being a black woman in the United States of America, and she does it in a way that is so smart and also like totally lit and hilarious. She's a genius. I can't even explain how genius her writing is. She writes about these really important issues in a very wholehearted way, but never like a heavy-handed way. And it can serve as like a really good 101 level of a breadth of the topic of kind of race and gender in America. But also, it also has like a lot of depth, like a 201 level depth to it also. So if you've already read about like topics like this, it's still a really worthwhile read. Though most of all, it's funny. This is probably the funniest book I've read in years. That's what I just like definitely that blew me away the most. I was laughing so much. I don't think I've ever laughed so much while reading a book. It's amazing. She's so smart. She's so funny. So I definitely like adore this book and very, very highly recommend this essay collection. So I hope you enjoyed hearing about those reads. I hope that you might even like pick up one or two of those reads because they're all really good. I definitely highly recommend all of them. So I hope you enjoyed that. Till next time, my lovelies.